Would you please turn off your cell phones? And welcome to the fourth of our 2024-25 South Franklin Circle Dialogue Season. Our mission is to sponsor informative programs of special and timely interest for the enjoyment and edification of the South Franklin Circle community and the community at large. This evening, we will hear from someone who has been enmeshed in a field we all know a great deal about, aging. My name is Pauline Ramig, Chair of the South Franklin Circle Residents Dialogues Committee. And committee members, would you please stand to be recognized? The residents of South Franklin Circle are delighted to welcome all our guests this evening. We would like to especially acknowledge the following, and if you'd please hold your response until all have been recognized. Kendra Erdzik, President and CEO of Judson Senior Living. Nancy Satula, South Franklin Circle's new Executive Director. Beth Imbrescia, Vice President of the Judson Foundation. Beth Cohen, Chagrin Arts Board Member and Chair of the Board. John Heinert, Chagrin Arts Board Treasurer. Sean Herron, he's in the back room taking charge tonight. He's with the Judson IT Department. And Darlene Cash, South Franklin Circle's own Community Life Director. Please. And then we have dialogue sponsors, and we express our gratitude to all our season sponsors, all South Franklin Circle residents. They make it possible to provide honorariums and to underwrite the reception costs. Now, a very special thanks to this evening's sponsors, Pam and John Bleemaster, and we have Pam here. John and Audie Schneider, and John and Sylvia Yankee. Thank you. Our next dialogue is February 19th, a short 3 weeks from tonight, with Craig Hassel, President and CEO of Playhouse Square. Following today's presentation, we will break before we go into Q&A, and I'll be ready with the mic. So especially since we're debuting our new channel for TV viewers, please wait until you get the mic and then state your name and ask your question. And now let me also share with you, if you haven't read it already, you'll be able to review this afterwards. This is going to be filmed and recorded. So if you want a review of tonight's you will be able to see that. And we have a number of residents who are viewing tonight because they're not up to joining us. Now, it's my great pleasure to welcome the President of the South Franklin Circle Residents Association to the podium. John Schneider will introduce this evening's speaker.
Before I introduce our speaker, I would just like to say that I am absolutely thrilled that Sean is here and that we have microphones that work and we have a camera that works and people at home who are watching this. So it's very exciting. And Pauline was just jumping around out there earlier. So it's an exciting day. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, June Taylor. June has had great success personally and has benefited our community, making Northeast Ohio and our state a better place for all of us. June holds an engineering degree and a Master of Management degree from the J.L. Kellogg School of Management. She has held several positions in venture capital firms as well as banking prior to moving into the nonprofit arena. June currently is the Chief Performance Officer and Strategy Officer at the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging. June has been described to me as a dynamo and is responsible for moving the Western Reserve Agency to a top performing agency in our state. As you can imagine, attracting state and federal dollars is no task for a wallflower. June has won over national and state politicians with her hard work and her excellent powers of persuasion. Additionally, June has served on several nonprofit boards in our area, which include Cleveland State and the Sisters of Charity. It is my great pleasure to introduce June Taylor, who will speak on life as an adjustment, which is something we can all understand. Come up. Thank you, June.
Good evening, everyone. I think this portable mic is on. Can everyone hear me okay? Great, great. Well, first, I'd like to thank Pauline. I'd like to thank the entire Judson community, your Board of Trustees, for the sponsors this evening. Thank you so much for your generosity. And it's nice to see everyone here, and it's a full house on a weekday evening. So let me start first by talking a little bit about myself and my background. I'll talk about the agency. And then usually when I give this talk, most people want to talk about the politics and whom I've worked for and the folks I've talked to even as recent as 24 hours, given what's going on in Washington, because my funding from a Medicaid perspective was frozen in the last 36 hours, and then it's been unfrozen in the last 12. And there's a lot going on, and I silence my phone, but I know when I turn it on, I'll have a lot of messages because that's just where we are in time. I am not a native Ohioan. I'm a cheesehead, born and raised in Wisconsin. My parents migrated up to Wisconsin, having been born in Mississippi. My parents were civil servants. My mom was a teacher and rose through the ranks in education, and my dad worked for the post office. So I come from a background of the civil rights struggle, and education was just a foundation in my home, and my parents were tough. So when people say, what do you think made the difference? And I get this question a lot, especially regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, or what it used to be called, or what it won't be called in the future. I get all those sort of questions. They say, well, what made a difference in your household? And I always say, just tough parents. Their rules were their rules. You crossed them, there was always a penalty. And being the firstborn, I was expected, to meet those expectations. And my dad was one of 7, my mother was one of 3, and I had a lot of boy cousins, but I came on the tail end, and so I only had girl cousins. And I didn't have many girl cousins, so it was expected of me to do certain things. So when people say to me, how did you decide where to go to college? I said, well, it was kind of already determined. It was just a matter of where. And my health times have changed. Let me make sure that this is, okay, here we go. So, Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging, let's talk about how it works in the real world. When the Fed gives money to the state has to figure out how do we help the less fortunate. So the less fortunate folks are taken care of by area agencies on aging. In every state in the United States, there's an area agency on aging network. We are the holders of those Medicaid dollars, and then what we do with those dollars is we have social workers in our organization who then disperse out into the communities. Now, what's interesting about this agency is we are a delicate balance between rural and urban. So my geographic region is Geauga County, Lake County, Medina County, Cuyahoga, and Medina. And so I have to go into communities like City of Cleveland, City of East Cleveland, and the suburban areas, but then I also have to go into Lorain County, Geauga County, and so forth. So it's a very delicate balance from a recruiting standpoint because you need people to go into your urban communities that have their challenges, especially in the weather like now, or in the season where it gets dark early at 3:30 and 4 o'clock, and social workers say, no, I'm not going into these particular neighborhoods. I'm concerned about my safety. You have to be able to recruit and find people who can do both. The state, from a Columbus standpoint, they're not interested in what your challenges are. They just want to make sure that your performance markers are on task and on target. With regard to our mission statement, I think you guys understand that, but we have a unique perspective of it. We want to help people live independently in a place that they call home. So from a government perspective right now, what has changed is that the government is looking more at appropriating dollars for individuals who are in need to support them in their home versus an institution. That's what's changed dramatically I'll say in the last 5 to 7 years. And it's going to be migrating even more so that way due to the cost of building materials, inflation, having people in congregate settings. And we learned from COVID how congregate settings can be advantageous for some, but they can be challenging for others. So I think we're going to see more of the government decide that, you know what, for the most part, we're going to support people being in their homes. So in 2023, fourth quarter, I was able to secure $4.5 million from the government to do home reinforcement and safety inside of homes. Being able to put ADA toilets, grab bars, shower surrounds, all the things that could make individuals more safe. This year, I will be touring South Carolina, North Carolina, and doing a tour presenting those results because Ohio is one of the first states to appropriate above $2.5 million for those type of resources. My CEO is Doug Beach. One of the things that I want to talk about tonight, and I think it's appropriate because, you wonder, how did I get to a certain place? Where was I? I was in the private equity and venture capital world for 15 years. I worked for a gentleman, Mal Mixon, who was the chairman of Cleveland Clinic. Worked for him for 15 years, and I worked with his various private equity funds, of which he had 6 or 8 of those funds, and I worked with 2 of them that were here in Cleveland. And what happened was the Dodd-Frank Act came into play, and the Dodd-Frank Act was a point in which the country felt that being in alternative investments like private equity was a high risk. Funny how life is. We're having that same sort of discussion now about Bitcoin and other alternative investments to this day. We're right back there. I just quoted and said to someone the other day, I said, well, if you were going to tell me that private equity was risky, wait till you do Bitcoin and some of these things you can't pronounce or don't know what they are. So I think we need to really take a look at this a little bit more closely. But I ended up at Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging because Governor John Kasich at the time was thinking about launching a presidential career, and the CEO of Western Reserve Area Agency, who was an African-American male, had decided to retire, and a white male from Florida applied, interviewed with the board, and got the job. And John Kasich said, June, I do not want to be accused of breaking the continuum of success because we have a gentleman now that's coming from Florida that's going to institute Florida-type ways into Ohio and doesn't know what's going on. So I want you to go and babysit up there and see how it goes. I said, are you out of your mind? Okay. I said, first of all, I don't know jack about aging. Secondly, Western Reserve Area, what did you say? This is not the American Automobile Association. This is the what? He said, Area Agency. He said, listen, you got to learn on the Older Americans Act, and then you've got to learn what all these things are by next week, and then we're going to talk about it more. You will see that this sort of flippant assignments, that's how some of these executives are, and they just function. So that was my assignment. And as you can see here, I went home and started reading about all these different things. What's a passport waiver? What's long-term care consultations? How does it relate to public health? What's veteran-directed care, transitional care, all these sorts of things. So I went and learned about this $85 million operation, and then went back and said, okay, Governor, I think I've kind of got the basics here. He said, good, let's call the CEO up and tell him what I'm getting ready to do. Called him up on speakerphone. He said, I want you to meet my friend June Taylor. She's going to help you. And if you have a problem with it, you call me, because we got to get this going, because I'm out of here. I'm running for president. Click, and that was it. So I got put into Western Reserve to help the organization make the transition. What can I say? It's been 10 years. Okay? I get along well with the CEO. I get along well with our CFO. I've helped recruit for many of these different positions, and it's been just an incredible ride. And that's why I said to Pauline when we talked, I said, Pauline, I want to really talk about everyone's journey is different, but I think one of the things that I have learned from my journey, and I think that's a transition piece for especially many women who are looking, that might have families, that might be wondering, you know, what can I transition into? This aging space, this sector, a profitable sector that has the products and or services, whether it is like Judson that has the communities. This sector is one of the fastest growing sectors in business, and there are a lot of positions. And I think one can really figure out how to sort of navigate their way through it. One of the things I also wanted to mention in terms of what are some of the phone calls that I get from organizations. Your age group and demographic is one of the most requested demographic requests that I get. I always am asked, well, you know what, Ms. Taylor, it's nice to talk to you, but bottom line, can you give me 4 or 5 seniors that, you know, guess what? They can drive, or we'll go pick them up, but they can arrive not just on time, but on early. And they might want to help us in some capacity, mentor, help a young person, or give us some sort of transferable knowledge from what they did in their particular roles and share it, because we might actually learn something. So I think that you're starting to see employers really value the perspective of individuals that are 65, 70, 75 years and up. They are requesting firms like Sam's Club, firms like Costco. If you are departing there, you're seeing a lot of products that they're trying to put into the homes that you all best can speak from a safety standpoint, from a falls prevention standpoint. And I think these are new areas that I think a lot of people hadn't thought about in terms of the employment pool of individuals. I hate to say it, but some of our generational X and Z, they're not dependable. They don't want to have a car. They want to arrive when they want to arrive. They've got a different perspective on how work should be, and it doesn't fit into some of the models that you're seeing, especially you're seeing a lot of offices saying we're returning to work, and they're saying, no, I'm not returning. So we're going to really see, I think, and this year and next year, how this is going to turn out, also on the government level as well. Networks are so critical. I did not get into government, and I think if some of you looked at my background, I chaired the Casino Control Commission from the beginning of casinos being in the state of Ohio, and I ushered in betting, which we just finished up. I think this year we're probably, I think we finished up maybe 24 at about 1.9 billion. When I brought it in, we were about 1.3 billion in revenue. Sports betting is brought into the state. Whether you like it or not, it's here. Whether you like it or not, it's contributing some substantial dollars. And that was a position, another position I was not interested in. I was interested in the Turnpike Commission, because you might have known that the state of Indiana did a turnpike leaseback deal, and for my resume and my own interests, I had never done a leaseback deal in excess of $5 billion. I'd played in the $800 million to $2 billion space. And I said to Governor Kasich, I said, you know what? I said, I'd really like to get into the turnback leaseback deals because I think Ohio could benefit from those revenues and so forth. He said, have you seen our roads? Our roads are fabulous. He goes, I'm telling you, when we lease back our turnpike, our roads are going to look like Indiana's. What do theirs look like? I said, they're horrible. Once you cross the line, I said, you're bump, bump, bump all the way there. He said, and that, I'm not going to have that on my watch. So no, we're not going to do a turnpike leaseback deal. You're going to oversee the 4 casino families. I said, are you out of your mind? That sounds like something like out of a movie. He said, it will be. So I submitted my resume. I interviewed with members of the legislature. And I was candid about the fact that I didn't support casinos. I voted no. I wasn't interested in them. And lo and behold, he said, you're the perfect candidate. He said, you're the perfect candidate because you actually hate casinos. He said, there's so many people that have interviewed, and guess what they told me? They love casinos. They started telling me about the movies they'd watched and all these different things. And he said, you were the exact opposite, so we think you'll be perfect because you'll be really tough on them. And I was. And so had I not had that personal network, I would say that opportunity would not have presented itself. And I think also it was the beginning of more of an acceptance by executives of speaking truth to power, being very candid about whether your skills are a match, whether your interests are a match, when I think that prior to that, we might have been a little bit more covert about what our true interests were and whether or not we were really interested in the job. I think for so long, many of us have been interested in the job because it was a job, but not interested in the job because of the actual work. So I wanted to just mention how those networks are really critical. And I can say that for me, when I came and met Pauline here, as many touchstones and points that I've had with aging, I'd never come across Judson out here in Chagrin Falls. And I'm out here out the square by the falls and, the popcorn shop and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are right down the street. So your location is just perfect. And I'm so glad that now that I've met you and been here on your campus, which is absolutely stunning and lovely. And you all are part of the fabric here, and I'm glad to make the acquaintance. Unretiring. We are seeing this, we're getting phone calls from so many people that are saying, guess what? I retired and I'm not enjoying it that much. I'd like to find, 5 hours, 15 hours, just 2 days a week. Is there something else I can do? There are organizations, AARP, as well as many of the other associations throughout, especially art and music and so forth in Northeastern Ohio. They welcome the opportunity for individuals to come and serve their time. And you never know. I do know a couple of people that have, you're having Playhouse Square come and speak. I know a couple people, I think they started out as docents and wore the red jackets, and now they're part of the team there. And it's been a wonderful experience. It's been a wonderful experience for them as well. I'm starting to see too, a lot of CEOs are really redefining this as their space as well. And I think it's a reflection post-COVID, I'll say, that people are really saying, how do I want to spend my time? How do I want to spend maybe my fourth quarter, my third quarter? And we're starting to see a lot of people say, you know what, I've done enough, I've spent enough time, I've secured enough resources, and now I'd like to do some things for myself. So I hope to be able to do that shortly. I got a little while to go here. Okay. I wanted to talk about this because this artificial intelligence piece is really, I think, the cognizance renaissance that our nation is starting to go through. We've been through the automobile piece, we've been through the manufacturing piece, we've been through the service sector. I think what we are seeing now is the beginning of a renaissance with regard to being able to communicate using our devices, which have really, really helped those that have interesting needs, physical and so forth. And we're now at a point where we're able to utilize those software as well as the hardware to do very simple tasks. I just recently sent my administrative assistant to an AI class, and I can tell you, she's getting her work done now. By lunch and 1 o'clock, she's almost finished. And I'm like, Vera, how are you getting this stuff done? She goes, this AI stuff is scary. She goes, I'm thinking it's gonna replace me. And I'm like, well, guess what? You know what? I said, we're all thinking that, but we're using it in more and more creative ways. If you get the opportunity, because I think that people often forget that you can take classes at Tri-C free of charge. That's something you might wanna just take advantage of. Or do the MIT, because your technology is really fabulous, do the MIT piece where you're able to take any of their classes free of charge and do it through Zoom and some of the other long distance learnings component. You will be surprised how easy it is. You will be surprised how accessible they are to answering your questions and having some one-on-one time offline, not in front of anyone, so there's no need to feel embarrassed or anything, but you can really, really develop your skills. And if you haven't thought about that, you can do it at your own pace as well. So that's something to really think about. I am in my, I've been appointed now by 2 governors. So Governor Kasich, I was reappointed by Governor DeWine. I'm working with him now with regard to the LG appointment, and Senator Husted, as you know, was appointed last week. So that's taken care of. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting gubernatorial race, which will be upon us in 18 months, which will be upon us from a monetary standpoint in 12. And it's going to be a very, very interesting year from a national perspective. We are very concerned as an agency that we are not going to see the same sort of resources that we've seen these past 8 to 10 years. But I think that, and I'm hopeful that things will settle down in the next 4 to 6 weeks. The pace, I think everybody has been okay with the pace of the new administration, but the actions as a result of this pace have been somewhat unsettling. And I think that really what made the mandate change in the last 12 hours or so were the banks that made the phone calls to say, listen, when you take a look at what we make from our overnight rate and the type of funds that we're able to generate from those deposits that are made at from those agencies, it was a no-brainer. We're talking trillions of dollars. So I think people really made some calls and have done some pushback. And I think that's really what has happened, in addition to the injunction that occurred by the judge. But I think probably in the next 12 months, we're going to probably see more of the judges play more of a role, as well as I think the Supreme Court is going to get tapped a couple of times as well, too. Is this sort of thing helpful? Okay, great. Pauline, I've kind of run through what I do on a day-to-day basis, the social workers, I've talked a little bit more about the flavor of where things are today. Would this be a good time to kind of pause so that I can understand where everybody would like the conversation to go? Because that's what I really like, for it to be more of a conversation versus me just talking to you guys. But I hope I've given you enough flavor to ask any questions that you may have of me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
We'll now go into Q&A, and I knew Trevor would be the first one.
Thank you for absolutely informative presentation. The question I have is, what is the estimate of the unhoused people in your area, in the Western Reserve?
I'm sorry.
What?
How many people? Okay, so there are 367 staff. We have 240 social workers. Is that helpful?
Is that what you were?
Oh, what's the total number? What is the total number of the homeless in this area?
Oh, you know what? I can tell you, I do not know because that is overseen by the county. That's overseen by the county and the city, and I have not seen our most recent stats at all. I haven't. I have been so buried in the long list of individuals whom are waiting for their Medicaid component to be on the rolls. So if you remember during COVID, we took on people because they were ill, okay? But then once COVID was over, we shed them off. Now they have to reapply. So I can tell you that our COVID line, since COVID, we have a roll of over 263,000 people waiting to get on Medicaid. Yes. And that's just Medicaid.
Just in your area?
That's in my area. And there are 13, so in Ohio, there are 13 AAA regions. There are 88 counties. So there are 13 of our groups overseeing these 88 counties. I know that the longest line of people waiting to get on Medicaid is in Cuyahoga County in the state. Yes.
Do we need to build more houses?
Yes.
So
Okay.
how many more do we need to build?
So, well, let me tell you, I don't know how many more houses because that's a HUD, Housing and Urban Development, on the federal level. And then on a county, each county has their Cuyahoga County, Lorain County, Geauga County. Okay, so let me tell you what's being discussed on the national level because this was one of my calls today, all right? So if you look at the state of Ohio, where's our Air Force base located? Dayton, that's right. Where's our lottery based? Cleveland. Lottery's Cleveland, right downtown next to Tower City, okay? Where's our turnpike based? Berea, okay? All right? So, I'm glad we're going through this exercise. So Columbus has the State House, has the Capitol, it has Ohio State, it just got Intel, 2 weeks ago it got a weapons facility, okay? Columbus has made itself a whole powerhouse, okay? But what President Trump believes is that the federal government should mirror the state. So Department of Agriculture is where? DC. Defense Department, DC. HUD, DC. All those parts and parcels of the federal government are all in DC. So what do you think he wants to do? Break them all up. And he wants to make the government an economic development powerhouse and distribute parts of the federal government into different states. So I said to the governor today, I said, Governor, put in a bid for HUD. He goes, June, what are we going to do? Why would we do HUD? Why would we do defense? I said, Governor, no disrespect, but we're cornfields, okay? Defense, that's just not our thing. We're nowhere near. I said, you know what? I said, ask for HUD. Because we're in the center part of the country. We've got some of the most talented developers in Ohio. We know how to build. I said, give it a shot. The worst thing they can tell us is no. I said, but I got to believe between JD, Senator Marino, Senator Husted, and you, we'd have a pretty good chance. Because you got to count how many steps are you away from the throne? We're not. We're up there on the Diaz already. So why not ask? The worst they can tell you is no. So that might be a play that you see in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Who knows? But those are the sort of things that are being discussed in terms of how do we create more jobs, more parity, so to speak, and I hate to use the phrase, but that's what the phrase they use is to break up the swamp of DC, but to break it up. So that's sort of the creativity you're seeing behind the scenes. But your question is excellent. And I'll tell you, there's a whole cadre of firms that are focused completely on that homeless piece. Let me tell you, that's the elephant that I just don't even want to have to take a bite of. It is a tough one. I think it's one of the reasons that California is in the state that it's in. They've never solved that homeless piece. Not to mention Seattle, Portland, and that West Coast. Now, I know part of it is too that everybody shipped their folks out there, but it's been tough. I mean, you've read about the whole ICE raids the last week. Coventry was, Cleveland Heights was ravaged. I mean, people were saying they were sitting there eating dinner at the taqueria, at cilantro and whatnot, and the way that they're so aggressively burst into those restaurants and people with their families and their children. They say it's the likes of nothing we've ever seen. It's not going away. It's not going away. This is the time in which we are, and standpoint, this is going to interrupt, I think, the food chain. I think it's going to interrupt construction train. I mean, who's going to do some of this work? No disrespect to any ethnicity, but I tell you, every time I'm out to dinner and I look back there, I'm seeing only a couple of different ethnic groups picking lettuce, picking strawberries, doing the cooking behind the scenes, putting roofs on, and so forth. I don't know who's going to take those positions, given that we have so many positions currently open throughout, not just throughout the state, but throughout the country.
Are you suggesting that a lot of states are trying to bring these big hubs into their state?
Yes.
Is that an official request or just an assumption that that's what's going to happen?
No, I think it's a discussion at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a discussion.
Nancy King-Smith, and I have a specific question following up on what Trevor said, and then a bigger question. The specific question is, how big a problem is homelessness among the aging? And the bigger question is, you mentioned that you're expecting that the dollars for aging are going to decrease. Mm-hmm. What are the impacts going to be that you're seeing of that?
Sure, excellent question. Yes, the aging component of homelessness is there. It is not the largest sector. I believe the largest sector is veterans, followed by females with children. What I see affecting the aging population the fastest in the work that I'm doing are grandparents taking care of grandchildren, hands down. I believe that 60% of the population in northeastern Ohio that are seniors are taking care of one or more grandparent on a daily basis now. The number is astounding. And I get that number from Shoes and Coats for Kids because they're keeping track of it quite well. We attribute this to the rapid rise of incarceration, the rise of opioid use and marijuana use, which has rendered many of these parents of the children completely unable to function and take care of themselves, not to mention to take care of their dependents. And so grandparents are stepping in, but their ability to sustain it is not there. Especially, we're seeing those numbers at the food banks, where grandparents are saying, they can't afford to feed the kids, and they can't afford, or they are too frail to prepare their meals and and provide for them on a daily basis, which is really, really tragic. In terms of the resources that are going out to seniors, the resources that are being deployed are to prevent, or from a safety perspective, they are to prevent falls, and they are to increase technology from the standpoint that there's a two-way street now with regard to communication of health, okay? But where we're lagging is that many of the communities that are getting the technology don't have the infrastructure to support the technology. I mean, there's some areas of Lorain County that if I wouldn't have my MiFi, my portable hotbox, I wouldn't be able to communicate with my office. There's just no broadband out there. And so we have never, that first step that many of us take for granted of having Wi-Fi here and so forth, many places it's not there. And, nor is it affordable for individuals who are on fixed incomes and so forth to have. And so I think that you're going to see those dollars for the safety piece come, and the reason they're coming is because it is the least expensive way to house an individual remaining in that home. And it's what's really tragic, as you all know, and you drive past it, many of these homes, they're obsolete. They're obsolete for today's living. The two-story living for many of these individuals that are, nonagenarians, I mean, we just put in a railing of I believe she was a 96-year-old female, African-American. She only had two comorbidities. She was not at all needing of daily care in the home or food, and she was functioning on her own in a very good way, but she had not been upstairs to her bedroom in over 6 years because of the stairs, and her railing had fallen apart. So she was functioning completely living room, dining room, kitchen, bath on the first floor, and had been that way since the late, I think she said maybe 2017, 2018. Yeah. Yeah. Many individuals do not have a dependent. Also, sadly, many individuals have outlived their dependents, or their dependents are, we don't know where. And a lot of individuals since COVID, they don't open their doors. They're too fearful. They're too fearful. We just did a railing installation of a gentleman. He didn't know the COVID had lifted. It was over. He still thought it was still, you're supposed to be in your home, mask on, safe. Now, what was great was he had not contracted it at all, and he was safe and everything, but he was in another time and space. We were like, no, this is 2025. It's been over, and had no idea. So it's fascinating to really to see what that mandate did from the standpoint psychologically for many individuals that don't have support. That's what I'm really saying. Not having that support is really, really key. And we see it and touch it. Yes, sir.
How do you get clients?
The clients come to us because, okay, it's automatic. Okay, so this is how it works. When you apply for a housing choice voucher program, HCVP, I was going to say all these acronyms. If you apply to get housing assistance, then you automatically, your name comes to us. If you apply for HEAP, Heat Electric Assistance Program, you automatically come to us. If you are asked the food bank for assistance, your information automatically comes to us. So on that earlier slide where it had the Aging Disability Resource Center, it's called the ADRC. The ADRC gets all those names daily. And it's a huge call center. Everyone has on their headset, and they are calling those people and asking them for their information and getting them signed up. Once that occurs, then it goes to our social work department. They put on their backpacks, strap everything up, go out to that location, and they do an assessment. There's very few people, we're encountering no fraud. There's not anyone calling that needs assistance that doesn't need assistance. I mean, it's almost the opposite. We're saying, well, why didn't you call us in 2020? I mean, you've been living like this? It's unbelievable. But I know from the federal government standpoint right now, they're thinking that the system is wrought with fraud and abuse and waste, and we're not seeing that. I believe if someone were to say to me and I had to wave a magic wand, I would make a work requirement for anyone receiving housing assistance. That's what I would do. But I'm not in charge. Yes, sir.
My name is Drew Clemens. I'm a physician, a psychiatrist at university hospitals.
Would you like to come back to work? We need you.
I'm aware of that, yes. How well do you think the medical care system in this area is doing in serving the needs of this population?
Okay. I believe that post-COVID, sir, the medical system is doing as best as they can with the limited resources they have, and given the attrition. There are many physicians and nurses that said, game over, I'm out. And I know that both hospital systems have not been able to fill those, they've never been able to fill those positions at the levels that they were. You're familiar with the FQHC, a federally qualified health center? No. Okay, all right. So I think most of us are familiar with the upper scale of the health system, which is your hospital system. Underneath there's something called an FQHC. It was started, I believe, in the 60s after the riots, and as a result of various ethnic groups having a fear of going into a hospital and not seeing anyone that looked like them. So they thought they were going to be part of an experiment, et cetera, okay? So the government created these FQHCs. Cleveland has more FQHCs, and guess what? The physicians who are in the hospitals are the same physicians who are in the FQHCs because there are not enough doctors to go around, okay? So one of the FQHCs that you might know, it's right next to, it abuts Tri-C's Metro campus. It's called, it just slipped my mind. It's not CareSource, it's Care Alliance. And it's purple and white are their logos, and you'll see their buses and so forth. The same doctors, the same dentists that are at University Hospital, that are at Case, that are at the clinic, work at the FQHC because there's not enough to go around, right? So here's an interesting story related to data, because as you guys know, everybody has to look at the data. If you don't have the data, you can't sustain yourself and so forth, right? So I think Chris Ronane's team said, you know what? We've got all these people on the rolls waiting for Medicaid. Why don't we collaborate with Care Alliance, the FQHC, and see if they'll start going there to get their care, and we'll start knocking down the numbers. And I said, well, you know what? I said, let's see how busy they are, just to know, okay? The FQHC is busy with, guess what? Suburbanites who have figured out that the line is shorter rather than going to Hillcrest rather than going to South Point, rather than going to main campus, of which, sometime you call, you can't get an appointment, right? They're going to the FQHC on 22nd in Community College and getting in because there's no line. I couldn't believe it. So when I got the stats, I said, "Oh my God," because with your name, we can see, but your zip code. Zip codes were 222426. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Westlake on that side, and Shaker Heights and all that on the other side." So people are figuring out how to get care the best they can at the quality price and so forth. So when you asked me about housing, I was going to say the most creative, because I just gave this talk too, and they said, "What's the most creative housing solution you've seen?" LA, Costco is building apartments over the Costco. That's the most creative, that's the most creative housing solution I've seen. And I believe Case is going to have an intergenerational model in the next 2 to 3 years under this president. He's looking to do that, which I think is going to be fantastic. Yeah, I think that's going to be great. Well, there's someone that I was back.
Hi, Sylvia Yankee. June, give us some range of what the salaries are for the young social workers that are coming in. And are you able to hire enough of the qualified social workers?
No.
Talk to us about employment at your agency.
Sure. Our salary ranges are between $68,000 to $80,000, and it's not enough because they're able to do very similar to the nurses. They're going private. There are so many opportunities for social workers today to really partner with hospitals and or visiting nurses association and all to do assessments and work from home. And it's really tough to entice people to come to an office, drive down, come to an office, sit in your cubicle, log on. People want to, roll out of bed, flip on the laptop, click, 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 talk on the phone, and then go to where their consumer is. Make 5 to 7 visits, $300 to $400 each, and they're done for the day. That's a hard piece to compete with. And that's on the healthcare side. This is happening in insurance. I mean, look at Progressive. They close their doors in Mayfield Heights. They're all working from home. And you got to look at that impact on that city, right? All those employees and that payroll tax, Mayfield Heights just lost. I think it was 85 million. I'm on Beechwood City Council, so I see these numbers a lot. I think it was about 85 million in revenue that went out for Mayfield Heights. It's just incredible. Sure. Great question. Nurses too. I mean, I've talked to some nurses, and you might have seen this online. I mean, I've got some nurses that have left us. They were making 100, 110. They're now at 240, 260. Private duty, doing private work. Yes, for people who are in their homes that are saying, I want my daily care to be a nurse and my cleaning team and whatever team and cook and that sort of thing. They're part of a team. And then what I'm also seeing are streets sharing that same resource too. So people are getting very creative. Yes.
Is all of your financing public, or do you have private financing also?
Okay. All of our financing, and we're the now 6th largest nonprofit here in based in Cuyahoga County, we are all public. Our money comes from the government, and then we do some philanthropy. So one of my titles that I just assumed this past December is I'm also our Chief Philanthropy Officer. And so I'm in discussion with different foundations like the St. Luke's Foundation that wants to be focused on health and safety, Deaconess Foundation that wants to be focused on workforce. But for the most part, we are publicly financed. Nope.
Wow. Hi, June.
Hi.
Beth Cohen. 2 questions from an earlier question. What do all those people do who are waiting for Medicaid? And you spoke about the government agencies or departments in Washington.
Yes.
That may be fielded out to
States.
the states. How many departments are there? Are there states who will be competing for those departments?
That's correct. That's correct. Like anything else, we will be competing against other states, and that's why I said I typically measure how successful you're going to be by how far away are you from the throne. And I think Ohio's chances are going to be very good, not just this year and this 4-year term, but potentially too for Vice President Vance as well. So, and your first question, Medicaid, they go to they tax the hospital system by going to the emergency room. Yes, yes. That's right. And so that's why individuals are now going to Care Alliance and going to the FQHC, because I was just, last week, and sometimes I look at the numbers just to see on a Friday night, because I think, who wants to be in an emergency room on a Friday night, right? Or I'll look to see what the numbers are when it's like the NFC playoff for football or whatever, and I'm like, how many people are in the waiting room just there? 62, 48. So that means, you're going to be there 5 to 6 hours. Because they're short on staff as well, and so that's how they get around it. They don't have their card, so to speak. They're not in the system, but hospitals cannot deny care. So they go to the emergency rooms, and those are typically the reason why there's such a long line. Yeah. Yes, sir.
My name is Davis Young, and first thing I want to say is I'm appreciative of you being here. Clearly, you never have a dull day.
At all.
Of all the things that you're working on and all the things that you can see in front of you, sure. If you look out 10 years, what are the 2 or 3 most important priorities that you think need to be attacked?
Sure. Great question. I think number one, it's housing. I think the ability to provide shelter is going to become our number one task that we've got to address immediately, especially given what's happening with climate changes and so forth. I was just in Florida 2 weeks ago. It was cold. It snowed on the Panhandle, and the rain and whatever. And I said, I should have just stayed in Cleveland. And the homeless, and they brought up on the news how the homeless were affected because homeless have been there in California thinking, okay, well, if I'm homeless, at least I'm in a good weather. Not anymore. So homelessness. Second, I think it's food insecurity. You would be shocked at our data, because we log our data of every phone call. And we get everything from, people calling saying, can you help me get a boyfriend? Can you help me get a girlfriend? To I need a meal. We hear it all, right? Then you would be shocked at the number of people that call to say, I don't know where my next meal is going to come from. I'm eating Campbell's soup right now, but I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. What is your address, sir? What color is the building that you're in, or whatever? We're going to make sure a meal is there. So when the freeze went yesterday and everything was stopped, that included Meals on Wheels. I think you might have seen that. All the TANF funding, everything. Our phones lit up. And I don't know if you've seen a Meals on Wheel meal. Oh, the worst. Though that has been one of the things that I said to Senator Moreno, and I just said to Senator Houston last week. They were like, well, June, what would be your top item? I said, can you make Meals on Wheels? Just a basic meal, even if it were just a protein, a starch, and a vegetable. I said, right now when it arrives, I have to tell you honestly, I don't know what it is. I can't identify what's in the compartments. That's what I think is just unacceptable for us to provide.
Nobody in here is missing a meal. Where is the role for people like in this room?
To contact your congresspeople. Because, you know, no matter what's going on at the executive branch, Congress is the purse strings. And on my way here, I was talking to Congresswoman Shontel Brown's office that they're embroiled in. And this is, you know, this is interesting to see too, right? They're the purse strings. But behind the purse strings, just like my office, data. Everyone is logging every single call, which is why your phone has your phone number, and unless you block it when you call, they know exactly who you are. And they are taking account of what, you know, everyone is listening. They're taking into account to what their constituents are saying because they want to keep their jobs. And so I was just talking to Congresswoman Shontel Brown's office about something completely different, okay? The Board of Elections has a spot open, and 10 people are going for the spot. This spot pays $26,000 a year, and it's been labeled a congresswoman's position spot. But people have said, I don't care, I'm applying anywhere, and they're lobbying with the board people who are going to make the decision and cast the vote. So I said to her, I said, Congresswoman, no disrespect, but you're calling me about this BOE spot. You know, there's some really bigger issues right now. She goes, I know, but I'm getting calls about this too. I mean, that's how much clarity there is. And so I think, you know, who's this district? Is this Joyce, right? Dave Joyce.
Yes.
He's got a crackerjack team. They answer that phone and they know their data. Call them. You know, they'll take your calls.
Okay, we got the message. We got
Okay,
a call.
good. Call them, okay? Thank you so much,
Oh,
Pauline.
thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now our call is to the reception. I hope you go and enjoy for the next hour. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Okay.